When we understand that oftentimes, whether knowingly or unknowingly, others are influencing how we think and feel about a particular topic, can help you either influence others towards a best possible future or avoid being manipulated if you're the listener or the receiver towards something that's not in your best interest.
Welcome to the Disruptance Podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric Forney and Michael Bounds.
Every week on the show, we aim to disrupt the way real estate agents and entrepreneurs think about their business and life. And this week, Mike, I want to disrupt the way you think about words. And so what I'm going to start by talking about is the 7 times that science has proved that we're nothing but robotic chimps influenced and persuaded by mind readers. Okay, are you ready for the 7 times that science has proven this?
I'm. You know what? Me and you, I think, are kind of tracking on the same wavelength on this a little bit, but I'm gonna push back some.
Okay, so the reason why I want to talk to you about the 7 times is because I want to influence the way that you've decided that this conversation is going to go by using a number.
Okay.
Right. So now you're tracking along here with a number of times in which I'm going to give you examples to support my argument.
So why 7? Is that like an arbitrary number? Or is that something scientifically backed?
Well, that's a great question. It would be based on one, it's arbitrary, and it appears to be random, and yet it's one of the most commonly used numbers in order to persuade someone that it is random.
Got it.
Okay, so one way we can influence the way people think about something with our words is by making it clear and concise, which is why we've chosen to use 7 in this particular instance.
Okay.
And if life in the past 15 months of a pandemic has taught us anything, is that we can influence how people feel with the word science. And that's because the premise of science itself is really a lot of testing and measuring, and then reevaluating, coming up with a potentially new hypothesis, testing that, measuring that.
Smart.
And continuing to retool until you ideally get to an answer. Unfortunately, as we know, the word science has been used instead to really support or argue against a counter opinion or a counter belief that someone doesn't or wants you to align with. And so a good example of that would be vaccine. Do we get shadow banned for using the word vaccine? I'm not sure how that, or do we get bumped up and
pop up somewhere now?
Big CDC logo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now you did it. Now we're on a list.
Whether you're for or against or neutral, almost always science is the basis of an argument for whether someone is for or against the use of vaccines.
Yeah, and so I want to draw just kind of how does this affect my business?
Yeah, perfect.
Use the words that we use matter. So
absolutely.
So some of the things I could see as far as like with the vaccine that could have been rolled out if maybe a salesperson, maybe if somebody who could have did a better job of communication, I guess. So communication is key when it comes to the vaccination, and is key in your business.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm
perfect. Yes, thank you. You're absolutely tracking where I want to try to lead people, which is to understand that most of the time we're actually influenced by the words of others, not by our own thoughts and emotions. We're almost always influenced by the emotion that we feel in response to someone else's words. And those that understand the power of words and the specificity of how some words make us feel, can use that to influence.
Yes.
The challenge becomes do you use influence to be positive or negative?
Right.
Right? Is it influence or manipulation?
So I always say, I can say your beauty transcends time when I'm talking to my wife, or I can say your face stops a clock. I'm saying the exact same thing. I'm using different words. So depending
They feel
on
a lot
my,
different for
my
sure.
result,
My emotion is much different around those.
yes, depending on the results, it depends on how I want it. Baby, your beauty transcends time.
Thank you.
If that makes any sense. So you can apply that to your business when you're communicating with your clients.
That's right.
Or we talk to multiple, entrepreneurs, insurance agents, etc. No matter whoever your clientele is, you can cater a message specifically to them.
And having a model for how to use carefully crafted words into really what amounts to be a communications model of influence as a salesperson or as a leader becomes incredibly impactful. Which is why when I opened the conversation about having a concise number that you'll follow along with, so there'll be seven proven science examples that demonstrate that we're just influenced and persuaded by mind readers.
Yeah.
Right now the hook is, what to expect in the conversation and how many nuggets of information you're going to look for, and you'll believe that I have some authority because I've used science to justify this, right? And so when we understand that oftentimes, whether knowingly or unknowingly, others are influencing how we think and feel about a particular topic, can help you either influence others towards a best possible future, or avoid being manipulated if you're the listener or the receiver towards something that's not in your best interest. And so when we think about it from a business perspective, I think it's incredibly important to understand what are some words that you can use to unite your business, your fellow coworkers and leaders, in order to actually have a better future. One of the things that we know is incredibly impactful is the concept of imagining.
Okay.
So, Mike, I'd love for you to imagine what it would look like if this podcast had 1 million subscribers. How would you feel?
Well, I pulled up in my Lamborghini Urus. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. No, I'm playing.
What color?
Black. I've already imagined it. No, I'm playing. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, just using, I guess I call that future promise.
Yeah.
Being able to place, so we're real estate agents, being able to place your client in the home is a very, very powerful way to mentally move them in. Hey, is this where you would hang your TV, or is this where you would put your couch and your love seat?
Why are you doing that?
So mentally, you're moving them in. We kind of talked about this earlier. Psychologically, they are moving themselves in, and they're imagining that they're in that space. So they're more likely to purchase a home if they can. If you say to them, "Hey, where would I wouldn't put my couch in this place," then you already know where they are mentally. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So you're getting them to visualize what life looks like positively. In that specific environment, right? And it's interesting that our mind doesn't have the ability oftentimes to distinguish between the imagined future and the actual present itself. And I think the best example of this is a scary movie, or movies in general.
Right.
If you've watched a scary movie and ever been afraid, then you know that your imagined environment is way different than your actual environment. And yet you somehow still got scared in that movie. If you've been in a movie theater and you've jumped or been startled at any given time during a movie, it's not because the actual events on the screen happened in real life. All of that happened in your imagination.
Right.
And so getting someone in a persuasive conversation to imagine something puts them in that state oftentimes in order to go the direction that you're trying to lead them. And we see an imagined future, and what I think is, probably one of the greatest speakers and leaders in Martin Luther King talk about his imagined future of having a dream and what that future was going to look like. And so we know that hundreds of thousands of people showed up in Washington, D.C. for what really amounted to be an it really was not an organized mass event that was coordinated by giant corporations and mass entities of people. It was an organic movement of hundreds of thousands of people to Washington, D.C. for an imagined future of hope.
Right.
And so I believe that when you are incorporating words as in a persuasive position or in a position to influence in sales, imagine a future. It can be both positive or negative, whatever it is that you're trying to get your person to go with. Okay? One of the things that we like to use word-wise as well is assume. Mm-hmm. Mike, so I assume that because you were saying earlier that your car broke down, right?
Yes.
I assume that you're probably just going to get an Escalade, or that you're probably just going to get a bike to work.
Yeah. Right.
Or that I assume that because your car is broken down, you're just not going to work this week.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, the car broke down like 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
so
okay.
I've been working. So,
Yeah.
So
It's interesting though. You defended yourself with the reality of the situation though, right?
Yeah, I did. I don't know why I did that. It was just natural. I don't know.
Right. And so when I assume something of you, for whatever reason, you feel compelled to either accept it or defend it.
Yeah. I guess you're right.
And
Wonder why that is.
I don't know. But I have found it to
say
be
something profound.
I have found it to be one of the most effective ways to get the truth from someone.
Oh, what a great idea! I'm gonna start doing that to people. That's awesome.
So we do that from a scripting perspective regularly when we're trying to understand. So great example of this would be
that's
in
awesome.
When you're doing lead generation. You'll oftentimes run into a prospect who just wants to see a house.
Yeah.
They probably already have an agent, and that agent's on vacation, but they want to see the house, right? They're not calling for a real estate agent. They already have one. Their agent, however, is not available.
Right.
Or they're sitting right out in front of the house, whatever it is. And when you ask them, do you have a real estate agent? They'll oftentimes say whatever it is they think you want to hear.
Right.
Which might be no in that particular instance, because what they want to do is see the house.
Right.
But the answer changes when I assume something of them. Hey, Mike, because you called me directly, I assume you're not already working with an agent. Because you called directly, I assume you're not committed to your real estate agent. Now I've labeled you and what I think that it is you're thinking or believe. And for some reason, whenever our beliefs and thoughts are challenged, we rise up to defend them.
Yeah.
And so assuming has been an effective influencing strategy that we've used in sales from a word perspective.
I'm going to put that in my my little toolbox, because I don't do a lot of that at all. Like, because I think it takes a certain, like, your personality, and I've got it. I can be assumptive. I'm pretty. So I love that, because you're actually getting the answer. You're not getting fluff.
That's right.
I love it. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, what you're seeking is truth.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, when we label someone how we think or how we believe that they think or believe, they feel compelled to either validate it or defend it.
Oh, love it.
And so
that's dope.
It's interesting, because there really are two types of people. There are those that will defend it, and then there are those that will accept it. And that's also a word that we can use to influence the idea that there are two types of people, because there are not. In fact, there are all types of people, right? And yet oftentimes, in fact, even in our own political system, we see it. There are Republicans or Democrats, and yet, oddly enough, almost no one identifies with the far left end of the spectrum or the far right end of the spectrum. Most every American is actually a moderate.
Do you think it's actually every, though, or do you just mean a majority? If we're going to be picky about words.
Yeah. So thank you for picking up on that.
Yeah, you said almost no one, too, was the first thing you said.
Great. So see, my goal here is to be ambiguous with my word choices so that you align with one end of the spectrum or the other.
Got it.
And so one of the things that we can do with words is have inflated ambiguous language.
Yeah.
because that oftentimes causes a distraction of misunderstanding, and that misunderstanding or that distraction can influence. We see that especially with those who are credentialed. So if you watch politicians, or if you watch political public health officials from a national perspective, try to get clarity from watching an Anthony Fauci press conference.
Okay.
Most all of it is an inflated ambiguity, and that's because maybe there is no answer, or maybe that individual doesn't have the answer, or maybe he doesn't want, or maybe someone doesn't want you to know the answer. But ambiguity can oftentimes be a way to cause someone to be influenced on either direction that you would want them to be influenced.
This is where my wife is really good, because like, I don't remember anything, and she remembers everything. So when we're having
that
an
sounds
argument,
like a really fun. I'm sure that never gets brought up.
I'm getting beat down, and I don't even know what I'm getting beat down about.
That's right. I would not do well with that. I've said a lot of things I don't want to remember, probably.
Anyway, yeah.
So dividing or unifying by creating an identity with two types of people or three types of people, or labeling someone as one side or the other can be influencing or manipulating, because what we're doing is we're placing an identity onto someone.
You're I don't want to say stereotyping, but you're generalizing. So I'll make a lot of phone calls, and when I'm calling on other agents, I'll ask them, hey, I talk to a lot of agents. A lot of them are telling me this, or are they telling me that? Which one do you identify
Yeah,
with?
that's great.
And then what they'll do is they'll say, I identify them. And then it caters where my conversation needs to go.
That's right.
They literally tell me what I need to talk about.
You're taking a universal truth for the most part, right? You're taking relatively universal truths, and you're then dividing it to figure out what's the greater need.
Yep.
Right. Mike, what I found is that there are two types of agents. There are agents who want more time, and agents who want more money.
Right. Which one are
you? Yeah,
right. And then let's reverse engineer how we can blah, 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 blah. And then that's how we have our conversation.
That's right. So now we know what, and Tyler, you said off airs, in sales or in leadership, what we're often doing is we're actually problem solvers.
Yeah.
As long as you're not a hokey, dirty, salesperson who's actually manipulating people, what you really are is influencing people to understand their problem and solve their problem.
Right. And the problem they think they have might not actually be their problem.
Rarely is the problem that everyone thinks they have their actual problem. And that's because all of our problems are manifestations of our basic needs not being met, or the fear that our basic needs are not being met.
Yes.
It's kind of communication 101 is we believe that we need more money, or we believe that we need more time. But what we're actually doing is we're actually seeking to fulfill a basic need that we're in fear of not being met in the future.
Right. And then we want to get this money, and that's not really the thing that we're searching for. So we're in this loop.
That's right. That's right. And maybe what we're searching for is peace of mind.
That's exactly what we're searching for.
But interestingly, people manifest that as more money.
Right.
And so it's easy to influence or persuade someone with the lure of more money. No, and yet what they're actually looking for is more peace of mind, more financial security.
So my job is to get clarity around that. And so, for example, when instead of talking about, I'm talking to an agent, understanding what their one thing is, their why. Right. Yep. And then being able to identify, okay, how is this going to impact that? Like you go from selling 8 houses a year to now you're selling 36, 40 houses a year. How is that going to impact you? Not from a financial perspective, but from what's your why?
Mm-hmm. How do you help someone unpack that with words? As far as how do you help, I've really struggled with this concept of a big why. And I say that because it fluctuates, it moves, or oftentimes it seems superficial. Yeah. How do you help somebody unpack what their actual big why is?
I feel like this is what you've talked about before in sales, that like most of the answers are like 3 questions deep.
Yeah.
So you typically have to kind of keep asking to actually get to the root of it.
I think you're absolutely right. It moves. My why has changed.
Yeah.
My why is, even in the last 2 or 3 years, the way I would spend my resources. And the biggest thing is, I would look at, like, if you want to look at what's important to somebody, is you look at what they spend their money on.
Okay.
So just being able to identify that, unpack that. What are the things that actually motivates that person to get up? Is it your family? Is it God? Is it, some people it is money. For me, it's, I want my time back.
Yeah.
I make money in order to buy my time back.
What would you do with that time when you had more of it back?
Dude, right now, I'm chilling. I have never chilled so much. I like being in my yard, running around with that baby girl in the backyard, just hanging out.
Being present.
Being in the moment.
Yeah. Having peace of mind, right? Being actually present.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because I was thinking, well, what do I spend my money on? Lately, it's just crypto and hoodies. So I'm not really sure what that says about my priorities. But
all my money's like paying my assistants to do my job.
You're investing.
To do my work.
You're investing in crypto.
Yeah, that's right. Lately,
spending.
Lately, it's been spending.
Lately,
it's been spending for sure. But you know, that's a great example of difference in a word choice. And you know, on listing presentations, I've used that distinguishing difference between investing and spending.
Yeah.
You know, so on a listing presentation, I'm going to have that conversation that says, there's a great agent in our market who I have a ton of respect for, is with our company and has a fantastic business, and it is built around transforming someone's house, right? It's built around updating someone's house to be market ready, which makes perfect sense that you would get your house ready to sell for top dollar, right? What I know is that person's business model, and then how to counteract it if I'm in a competitive listing situation.
Right.
And so it's very easy for me then to always say, spend. Michael's going to want to spend your money.
Right.
In order to make Michael's job easier.
Right. Right.
I want to invest your money so that you get a positive return on investment.
Right.
I believe that you hire me to be a caretaker of what's in your best interest, and I would only invest your time or your money in a way in which it multiplies your actual return on investment. Because just think, Michael, if I was going to make my job easier and you were going to pay me for it, it'd be a great move. It would be a great idea for me to advise you to spend your money. But the only one who wins when you spend money to make my job easier is me.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to invest your money in a way and get you a positive return on investment. And there's a big difference in where the consumer feels between spending and investing. Right. They might be the exact same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
And so it's important to know that how we craft our words can either cause someone to move towards the direction we want or away from a scenario that either we want them to move away from, or a way that may actually cost us a sale in that case.
Another thing that we don't do a really good job of is when we're trying to capture their information, we actually paint ourselves in a box. So one thing that I do is I try to understand where a client is coming from, and then I want to understand where they want to go.
Absolutely.
So the reason being is, if a lot of agents, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, where do you want to go? And then they'll say, I want to be in Carmel, but then they're renting in Hallville or wherever, or the West Side or wherever. And so I want to understand where they're going and where they're coming from. And then I also want to understand from a budget perspective, I want to understand how much where they're at now and then where they want to go. Because most of the time they're going to fall in between, or sometimes they'll fall right now in this budget, sometimes, or in this market above that. So anyway.
So how do you then I mean, in order to obtain that, is that a future pacing question or a set of future based questions?
Everything is set in proper expectations. When you work in a model home, new construction, they don't spend all that money decorating these model homes that are brand new. They don't spend all that money just because they do it because they're trying to present future promise. They're trying to say, okay, you're coming from this. This is what your life can be.
Yeah.
So like as professionals, you have to, the manifestation of that, you have to do that, but you use your words. And so if you don't get really good at being able to be able to project, okay, this is your future promise, then people are less likely to take that step.
Yeah. Mike, what I found with most people like yourself is that you have a lot of success when you're able to provide people with that future promise. And so I think it would really benefit you if we talked more about words and the power of words. And that example is another way in which we craft words in order to move someone towards a desired future. And so oddly enough, what we found is that when we use most people, like yourself, benefit from, it causes you to go where we're trying to go. Yeah. And so I would encourage you then to figure out where you can loop the concept of most people into your sales conversation or your leadership conversation.
Is that social proof?
Yeah, you have social proof and you're demonstrating that you have results and experience doing that, whether that's the case or not. But
receipts. Yeah.
Right. And so we find this to be incredible. You know, one of the things that is a challenge in our industry is setting buyer consultations in person before running out and showing houses.
Right.
Right. Is that we know that not every agent is able to successfully obtain commitment from a buyer for exclusive work or to meet somewhere before they meet at a house.
Right.
And there are a number of reasons why I know the consumer wants to meet at a house, and there are reasons why it's in no one's best interest for that to happen. Safety being the first and foremost. Is meeting strangers at a random, empty, vacant home is in no one's best interest, the consumer or the agent, right?
And the seller.
That's right, or the seller, that's right.
Right.
And so there is a reason why the consumer and the agent and the seller all benefit from a meeting before the meeting.
Right.
And one of the biggest challenges, though, is for agents to secure that meeting. One of the ways we've been able to hack through that effectively is by using most people. And so it's been incredibly effective to say, especially to first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
Hey, what we found is that with first-time home buyers like yourself, they've most often found benefit in meeting at the office in order to put a plan of action together for how we're going to accomplish X that you said you want to accomplish in the future. So, does this time or that time work better to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's paramount. If you guys aren't getting buyers consultations, when I first started, that was the biggest first thing that transformed my business. Was I used to meet people willy-nilly. And then when I got really purposeful and a few years ago, it really transformed my business.
I found it's interesting that agents haven't been able to make that tie-in. Either they're afraid to ask or they're not sure how to ask.
Yeah.
And so what I found is you don't ask. You actually lead.
Yeah. I don't think that as an agent, they felt that they had anything valuable to say. I felt like I didn't have anything valuable to say. So therefore, like, let's get to the fun part.
Yeah.
But I noticed what it does is it sets expectations where anxiety drops, and then I'm more likely to help them buy a house. And it's a way smoother transition if I set proper expectations.
It's interesting because everyone benefits.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah.
It's not a win-win.
Yeah.
Because win-win doesn't exist, but everyone benefits.
Yeah.
And so when you're able to meet in person and do what has been most effective for most people, everyone benefits.
It's in our head. Like if we can frame it that way, that we're once I got in my head that I'm a doctor or I'm a lawyer, and you're coming to me, like your doctor wouldn't feel crazy about having them come in and do a consultation before the actual procedure. So once we start looking at ourselves as professionals, we'll then start behaving that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one more thing before we wrap up is a great example of another word or set of words that can influence the way people feel. Mm-hmm. And so just one more thing, or hey, before we go, or hey, last thing, sets an expectation of what's to come.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the 7 ways that science has proven that we're influenced by words and by phrases, we know that setting expectation for what's next is a great way to lead people to captivate their attention. And to pay attention to whatever direction we're trying to lead them and influence them with our words.